Final panel discussion titled Changing the Way We Do Business. So I invite Meri, Fatin back to the stage to moderate the discussion, and I'll be joining the panel in a bit of a twist for the day. And also I would like to invite up Huia Adkins and Nerida Kelton to join us. After the panel, I'll say a few closing words as well. So we're in the home stretch now, people.
Thank you, Josh. I just wanted to thank everybody who's still here. Like, you are high-performance conference attendees, right? And I appreciate you. This conversation is actually going to be really fun. So it is called Changing the Way We Do Business, but I think there will be an exploration here of the impact of this two-day conversation, but also a reflection on the changed landscape around the sustainability conversation as well, with a handful of the great minds that we've heard from over the last couple of days. Our circularity guru, business group leader in sustainability and technical director in circular economy at GHD, Huia Adkins. Our packaging guru, Executive Director of the Australian Institute of Packaging and Vice President Sustainability and Save Food, and the ANZ board member for the World Packaging Association, Nerida Kelton, and waste guru and maybe actual guru, I think. Our irreplaceable MC, environmental scientist, urban design professional, member of our Waste Authority and Dean of Sustainable Futures at Curtin University, Professor Josh Byrne. Please welcome them. So I've been reading a book called Influence by Robert Cialdini, and one of the things that he talks about is social proof. And I feel like this gathering over the last couple of days has been an example of the social proof of the intent of the people to do something well and differently. And I wanted to ask each of you whether you had an impactful conversation outside of these doors. Huia, can I ask you first?
Yes, absolutely. And look, I mean, I've had many impactful conversations today, and you know, some are big conversations, and some are small. Some are just, you know, off the cuff comments. But I guess what I'm really conscious of is that every conversation that's been had today, in whatever form it's appeared or evolved, could be that pivotal point in the penny dropping for you within your own businesses. And I think that, you know, many of you may have come today thinking, yeah, sustainability is a thing that I care about and I want to be involved in that, and others may not. But, you know, what we're really seeing, as Meri's pointed out and so many others here today, is that, you know, some of the conversations about climate change and sustainability and this thing and that thing and all the things, because there's lots of things, right? It's quite complex and it can be quite overwhelming. But the reality is that what we're talking about here fundamentally makes good business sense. This is future thinking for your business. This is how we go about creating resilience in our business models. So for me, just lots of them, I guess.
Really?
But I really liked the conversation that I had while I was eating the whole ice cream, which was really around flavour and
I enjoyed that one too.
Yes.
Good spot for a conversation.
Absolutely, yes. No, I can highly recommend. But I think two things have really stood out to me today, and one is about value, what that means to you personally and what that means to your business, and also a new narrative. That is what is going to lead us now. And wherever you are in your understanding is completely okay, because you are the expert within your business. So quite rightly, you don't need a consultant, I'm a consultant, or a CEO to tell you what you know about your own business. So you will be able to find that pathway with the resources and the conversations over the last 2 days.
Thanks, Huia. Josh, a memorable conversation outside of these doors?
There's one that comes to mind straight away. I have a few, but I might leave the other two until we circle back, no doubt, throughout the rest of this panel discussion. But the first that came to mind was one of the first conversations that I had, actually with Mel Holland yesterday at morning tea. So it was really my first opportunity to have a conversation with anyone outside of this room, having been on stage. And Mel came up and introduced herself, and it turns out that Mel is actually a trained landscape architect. And she reminded me that she took some classes that I was teaching in many moons ago. But what really hit me is that Mel explained that she has largely led the development of their business strategy and their circularity and their ambitions for sustainability with design thinking. And for a landscape architect who, of course, and for those who may not be familiar with landscape architecture as a practice, it is a wonderful discipline. And it is a design-led discipline, but embedded with an understanding of ecology. And that's what makes them different to regular building architects. And that made complete sense to me. I'm not a landscape architect, though I do employ 6 in my practice. And I think I've always longed to be a landscape architect, but I took the environmental science route instead. But it's the design thinking that struck me straight away. It made complete sense. So I guess that was the first conversation where I thought, you know what, we're moving past just the engineering side of change here, and that is critically important. Engineers focus on efficiency. That's been mentioned several times over the last 2 days, and that's critically important. But design thinking is how we see deep change.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great example. Nerida, your impactful conversation outside of these doors.
Oh, there's been so many. I think yesterday there was one that struck me, and it was around that aha moment about functionality and fit for purpose for food waste versus sustainability. And that's really important, that people do walk away understanding that we need that balanced approach. So that was a really good conversation. And I think the other one was, again, around food waste, was the comment that Josh made about talking to his family last night about food waste. Best thing ever to hear that. That is just music to my ears. Both of those conversations were fantastic. They were aha moments for the people in the room. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Huia, you just mentioned a new narrative, and one of the common threads that you have is that you've all been decades working in this space, long before people wanted to hear what you had to say about it, probably. And I'd really love to know, like, what you're observing about the moment that we're in now, and particularly because of what you've seen over the last couple of days. And I guess in alignment with that, the vehement nods that I saw when Ralph was just talking about the pace of change that's upcoming, and what you see happening given the length of time that you've been in the role. Shall I go to you first, Huia?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, what we've probably been kicking around for 25 years or so, you and me. We went to uni together, and I learnt many things from Josh in the early days, and I continue.
Not all study related.
Not all study related. That's right. Yeah. But I think what's, you know, I used to talk about the work that I did as being a decision. Do you want to be on the inside, do you want to be on the outside trying to beat down the door, bulldoze down the wall, or do you want to be on the inside, potentially changing things at a much slower pace? And, it was pretty bleak for a couple of years out there. It really did feel like you were working on the coalface trying to have these conversations. And as you say, Meri, there were very few people that, wanted to listen. And if they were listening, they would tell you all the reasons why change wasn't really possible. Now, what is great is to feel people rushing into the space next to you to have those conversations. So the tempo of the conversation is changing. The layers, of different people, different organisations, different levels of government rushing into the space to have the conversation is changing at pace. We're seeing global, national, state, local alignment on some things. Conversations are still developing and growing, but we are seeing levels of alignment that I have not seen in 25 years. And there are certainly people who have been working here a lot longer than me who could probably attest to the same. So I can really relate to the pace of change, but I can really relate to the tempo of the conversation stepping up. And people are not interested in the calamity and the chaos. They're actually interested in getting down to work. So actually no one cares whether climate change is human-induced or not. It's irrelevant. Who cares? because we're beyond that. We've moved on. So we are actually shifting. We are actually turning the dial. We are shifting and turning the dial, all of the things to do with the dial. And people are rushing in, and that's a great space to be in now.
Yeah. Nerida, can I go to you next on that? What have you observed? Because I'm sure the conversation around packaging has changed significantly over your career.
100%. It's funny, just from what you're saying, I had a memory. And it was, I think it would have been nearly 15 years ago, we had this really great idea to run one of our conferences about sustainability. And I remember there was a really fantastic expert on Al Gore. And she'd been trained by Al Gore, and we brought her, and I don't know if Ralph remembers this, and I don't know if Dos was there either, but we brought this lady to talk about sustainability and climate change, and there were people standing on the chairs. They were furious that we were opening up this dialogue about circular design and the circular economy and moving away from a linear economy. And I remember at the time I thought, oh, shit, I don't think we've hit the mark here. And then if we ran that conference today, be standing room only. And I think the other thing for me is the advancement of technology and material advancement and the technologies that go with the chemical science behind the packaging. It's fantastic. And it's just rapidly going this way. And we've just got to wait, because these solutions that some of you are waiting for are coming. I promise you they're coming. They are coming. People are working on them. We've got amazing technologists and scientists around the world that are working really hard. And I don't think we're that far away from some of the solutions that we're desperate to see. So I get really excited because there's so many new things. And then to Ralph's point, you have to keep reading, guys. You've got to keep up to date because it's happening so fast.
Mm. Josh, your sense of the kind of new narrative that we currently have and about what it's felt like to be in the long game on this one.
The main thing that I guess I've noticed working across the various aspects of my working life, whether it be in academia or in the media or in private consultancy, is that we no longer have to try to explain that there are issues. Nor do we have to try and feel like we're doing sales pitches for change. There is at least a reasonably established understanding that we have some structural changes in our economy that need to be addressed, that we have pressing environmental challenges that are of immediate concern. That is now being reflected in rapid change of policy, both in this country at a federal and a state level. Funnily enough, it's been happening at the local government level for years, but we're seeing federal and state policy catch up. And I think this is probably for two reasons. One, both Australia and the US, we're stuck in the dark ages for 8 years in the US, 12 probably really, and at least 10 plus years here in Australia, where public discourse was hobbled because of wedge politics and other agendas. And of course, that was just so enormously destructive. We seem to be moving out of that now into a new phase. And I'm yet to really see whether or not this new phase coming out of, let's call it the dark ages, is going to be a period that is led by true policy leadership, which I hope, because at the end of the day, I do believe in big government. Government is great when it's there to do good. Or whether it's going to be led by industry, which has certainly been the case in recent years. In the absence of policy leadership, industry has led. And I would suggest that that's largely been driven by the finance sector and the fact that there has been a beacon of progress and light coming out of Europe, despite what's happened in the US and here. So, the global money markets have been moving this way for years anyway. And so industry has followed, certainly the big end of town. But now we're at a really interesting point where domestically, policy is catching up. So my feeling is the magic will really happen when we see an alignment of policy leadership with where industry has been taking things anyway, but let's face it, we'll do much more when there's some comfort and security around their policy leadership provided by good policy. And then finally, when we can continue to craft a clear but respectful and sophisticated narrative with the wider community. And it's the alignment of those three. So yes, in answer to your question, I think things are moving very quickly. It's hugely encouraging. But I think we have the next couple of years will be really interesting, not just because of the urgency of the problem that's been spelt out, but when we see this alignment, I think that's when things will really start to hum.
If I can just add to that as well, don't be surprised if we see the incumbents in their final death throes. We will see people dig in as we start to see this alignment come into play. Don't be distracted. We will see them rocking and rolling and trying to shake and agitate to stop the change that is obviously inevitable now. So, those people still want to make money in the way that they've always made money, but we need to continue to chart our path forward because the world and the policy framework and everything that Josh has outlined will continue to change around it. So don't be distracted by those 2-year-olds in the back throwing a tantrum. They will all have to come along for the ride. So you may as well be sitting at the front of the boat rather than sitting at the back with the screaming 2-year-old.
It reminds me of a quote that I read when Jacinda Ardern resigned. Her partner, Clark Gayford, posted on Instagram he was talking about people making denigrating comments about her, but I think it applies in this situation too. An old Maori saying, which was that as the bathwater is going out, the last dregs make the most noise.
Absolutely.
That's a ripper.
It's a good one, isn't it? Yeah, it's really stuck in my mind. So then, given the longevity of each of you in terms of your careers in sustainability, do you still have aha moments or kind of exhilarating moments that make you feel I'm absolutely in the right spot and I really want to participate in this, or moments that make you realise just how much the shit is hitting the fan? You laughed.
Well, I mean, I think, goodness gracious, sustainable packaging in our industry is reasonably new. So up until the 2025 national packaging targets were established, most packaging designers and technologists had never even been to a materials recovery facility. So they didn't have responsibility once it hit a bin, once it got into a consumer's hands. And that's something really important for everyone to remember here. So this change with sustainable packaging or circular design or whatever we want to call it is not that old, really. Now, all of a sudden, the 2025 targets have made us realise we've got to look at the designing out of the waste, we've got to make sure that it's recyclable, recoverable, collected, all those things. And I think it's fantastic because packaging designers get to see the whole life of a pack, whereas before they didn't care. They didn't have to. It wasn't their responsibility. So that's something I think is really important. And everyone's doing a really good job. I'm sorry, they are. They might not be perfect. It might not be silver bullets as everyone wants, but everybody's getting on the journey now, and I think that's great.
Yeah. Aha moments?
Oh, look, all the freaking time.
Really?
Thank God, because, I've been around a long time. Look, absolutely, all the time. And they are coming harder and faster. So it's great. I guess the thing that's changed for me now is that, maybe a little bit older and wiser and thinking about the fact that one of the critical roles that I can play is to bring as many people on the journey with me as I possibly can, and then I can retire. But that probably won't be for a little while. But, so I'm working really hard to build a team within GHD so that we can, part of my role in Western Australia is to transition GHD, an engineering firm, into sustainability and design. And, so I'm really charged up about talking to, 10,000 global engineers who half the time can't even understand a single word I'm saying because I don't speak engineer and I'm trying to work out that language barrier. So, you know, for me, the aha moments are there left, right and centre. And what I love and where I've seen that I can add value is by bringing as many people together as I possibly can. And I love doing that. And that's part of my job. So, yeah, I think it's aha moments left, right and centre.
Yeah. What about you, Josh?
I think my greatest aha moment was that point when I felt I was no longer having to sell sustainability. And I touched on that in my previous response. So across the various activities that I've done over the years, and who would know, if you've known me for 25 odd years, even from the uni days, I always had a couple of jobs. I was a student, of course. I was on the Student Guild running a green ticket, largely trying to advocate for student engagement in pressing environmental challenges. Back in the day, it was about old growth forest logging. It was about the potential for increased uranium mining in sensitive parts of the country. And there were other, what we would call environmental protesting of the day, but trying to do it smartly. But I also was very proactive, and I helped set up a community garden on campus, and I worked in remote communities doing environmental technology transfer work. So there was always a bunch of things. And look, to be honest, that's because I think there's a bunch of ways we have to approach these problems. And I was deeply interested in understanding different ways to go about it. So march on 25 odd years, and I still have various hats in different parts of my working life. And I've essentially continued the policy, the design, the communications, and the research work in different sort of ratios. But for me, the only way that I think I've been able to sustain that, certainly over the last few years where the intensity of these various roles, as it does in one's career, really lifts, has been the fact that I no longer have to convince people that there are ways to do this better. Or, for example, where I'm going to be communicating something in a media piece, I have to be sensitive about how I frame it. That's gone. And Huia and I were just discussing yesterday afternoon. She said, "How's all your stuff going?" And I said, "It's actually going fine because I am able to be much more zen about it, number one, because I am comfortable with the fact that, broadly speaking, most sensible people are now on with the program. So it now comes down to, okay, well, what is our personal capabilities to affect change? But there's no hard sell anymore. So once that clicked in, again, it was probably 2 or 3 years ago. And this is not just also speaking from experience working in the bubbles that many of us do work in, because we tend to surround ourselves with people who are supportive. I mean, there's a reason why I live in Fremantle and my office is in Fremantle. You know, it's a bit of a bubble of a community. But in the various roles, leaving that bubble and being conscious of that, once I realised that, you know what, this is not a sell job, this is now how do we go about doing it, that was the aha moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really happy for you, really happy to hear that. Sometimes we get to the end of conferences and people feel like there's a lot of work to be done, but they need to order their thoughts. And so I think it would be useful to kind of have a call to action, you know, a sense of what to do next. And Huia, you and I discussed this before, so while Josh and Nerida are forming their thoughts, I'll ask you first.
So look, you know, I think the first thing is do what I just did. Stop and exhale. Take a breath. If you're feeling overwhelmed, that's a good thing. That's where you need to be. And then you can breathe. Because you need to start where you are. That's in fact the only place that you can start, right? You can't start anywhere else. Start where you are and understand your business deeply, because you are the experts of your business. And then start to think about this concept of waste, because it's a human concept. There is no waste within our planetary system, except humans have designed this incredible way to waste huge quantities of all of these really, really critical and important materials. So start unpicking your business. Where can you see waste? Start with the low-hanging fruit. And that's your point in. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to get it right. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you do have to start. And I think, you know, a number of panels previous, the panel that Mel was on and Hippie Kombucha, and Rob White from Hippie Kombucha, they will be the first to say, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We just went hard at it. We weren't perfect. Some things failed. Mel called that out. You know, she's, you know, she is all in, you know. So you go about it in your own way, but understand that the progress that you make will be valuable to your business and that there is assistance along the way. Obviously, DPIRD and others that you've connected with over the course of the last 2 days. So you don't have to get it right. You just have to get started.
Thanks, Huia. Nerida.
I mean, we always say that you're not alone, and you're really not. There are so many people that have done it before you or are doing it with you at the same time. So create a network so you can learn and work together and go on this journey together. From a sustainable packaging perspective, it's the same thing. Just take that first step. Don't be overwhelmed. Just take that first step. There are no silver bullets to it at the moment. We're not going to get it perfect, but it's okay. We're just going to all move in the right direction, and we're all going to get there once the technology is available. We're going to get there, but you're not alone. We're all here to help you. And I think best practice examples is something that's really important. Learn from other people, network with other people that have done it before you. And I think the SMEs in this country do a bloody good job. I'm sorry, they do. Yeah. And their packaging's brilliant. and we prove it every year on the world stage. You know, we won second in the world for the last 2 years with packaging because of all of you. You do fantastic work, you're innovative, you take risks, keep doing it, and people like us are here to support you. So.
Yeah, it's really important to celebrate success too at every opportunity. Josh?
3 points, if I can. The first one is picking up on Huia's suggestion about, you know, really having a deep look at your own operations. I would certainly support that, but do so with a methodology in place. Use an appropriate framework, and the waste hierarchy is a good place to start. And be authentic about that process in that if we are really looking at the transformation of this industry and a shift towards a circular economy more widely, we have to really accept that we are moving beyond just recycling or just waste minimisation. That's the lowest hanging of the fruit. So yes, go about assessing your business and your operations. And in fact, I found it one of the most refreshing things from several of the speakers is that there wasn't a push to necessarily go for consultants straight away. That often people who run their businesses are in fact the experts. There's no harm and nothing wrong with getting help. You should when you're ready. But even when you're doing it yourself, make sure you've got a robust methodology in place. And there's plenty of free resources and help, and I would start with the department. That's the first point. The second point that was raised by Karen Monaghan, and again, I'm trying to identify 3 things that really build on other people's presentations and works. I think it was all here over the 2 days. Karen Monaghan's suggestion of surrounding yourself with good people, with people who have similar aspirations and similar values. What a nice idea. Again, and it's all about not wasting energy pushing the proverbial uphill. So the next step from that, again, going past just that sort of nice, sort of approach, we would call that, you know, really map and understand your immediate business ecosystem and unpack that and look at not just who are good people, but what are the businesses that have similar values that ideally are at the same, if not a slightly more mature position that you're at and aligned with them. And I'm reflecting on my own business operations, running a landscape architectural and urban design practice. That's what we do. And we're an SME. There's 11 of us, myself and 10 colleagues. And several years ago, we made that same decision, is to stop working with clients that are super hard work and not take on jobs that are going to be jobs where we feel we can't do our very best, and to start to collaborate with other architects, other engineers, planners and clients that want to do good things and want to demonstrate leadership. So we're in different industries, but it's the same model. Then the final one is about communication and building that narrative. So there's been several presentations that have touched on the importance of messaging, of understanding, community perceptions and community behaviours. We cannot underestimate the importance of getting this right. We all know the confusion in the waste sector, if you like, and the recycling and the bins and what products go where is one very ugly, intangible example of that. But we actually need to be much more sophisticated, and we can't take the market and the wider community as mugs, but we do have to recognise that the information that they've been receiving hasn't been particularly neat over the years. And there has been a lot of what is described as greenwashing. So how do we make sure that messaging is sophisticated but simplified? Get rid of the noise, avoid greenwashing, and done in such a way where we it's almost about creating a licence to operate in a positive way. And if we are genuinely keen on market transformation, we can lead the market in a way by making sure the market understands the potential of what can be delivered. So they're the 3 tips that I would suggest taking home.
Thank you, Josh. I am going to end the conversation there, and I'm going to hand over in a sec to Josh to wrap up proceedings for the day. But I just wanted to thank what feels like a new branch of my family, the DPIRD family. It's been a pleasure working with you, Tamitha and Kendall and Phil and Kim, and it's been absolutely heartwarming to see Liam sitting in the front row for the entire event, and to all of the real heroes of this space that I've had the chance to meet and talk to over the last couple of days. It's been a real privilege, so thank you so much. Please thank Huia Adkins, Josh Byrne, Nerida Kelton.
Well done.